Good morning, Mike. How the devil are you? And good morning, Brent. How the devil are
Good
you?
morning, Brent.
I got the special hello, Brent. You didn't. It's because you live close to each other.
Yes. Oh, big. No, and I'm actually, to be honest, really excited for this podcast because it will be a special one. We still need to have a good name. Probably we can come up with that at the end. But this time our special guest is a person that became over the last 7 years a very close friend of mine. So this is why this makes that podcast quite special. And I think he has an amazing skill because he's a hand analyst. So this is not palmistry. So it's not like I'm telling you the future, but actually he looks at your hand and he's telling you what are your strengths, what are your inner purpose, where are your shadow sides, and helps people to transform by actually analyzing their hands. And therefore, I would like to welcome Brent on stage. Hey, Brent.
Round of applause.
And the way how we met, actually, I need to tell you that, Moneel, that was quite funny. So it's probably 7 years ago, Brent, correct me if I'm wrong. And my daughter, we were at the lake in Zurich, and we were coincidentally sitting next to each other on some blankets at the lake, and my daughter was doing cartwheels, and he had a baby girl with him. And she was completely amazed by my daughter. So the two of us started to talking. And I just came back from Austin, Texas. Well, actually, more Fort Worth, where I recorded some patient testimonials when I was working in the field of neurological rehabilitation. And so we started to talk, and it was funny to see that Brent is also from Texas. And he was reading Harry Potter in German. So what does a Texan do reading German? Say, yeah, I need to practice my German. So if you want to learn German, never read Harry Potter. And Brent is really lucky that we do this podcast in English. But on the other hand, all of a sudden, while we had that nice conversation, he asked me, hey, mate, can I look at your fingerprints? And I said, what? And he said, yeah, I have here that little notepad. And I just, based on the thing how you talk, I'm actually believing that you have on the left hand those fingerprints and on the right hand those fingerprints. And I said, what? So how?
Did you say dog? Dog, as in D-O-G fingerprints?
No.
Those.
Oh. Which? What was it? Sorry?
That I guess that he had a certain fingerprint type.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Cool. Okay. Right. Sorry. Carry on, Mike.
Exactly. And you can have on every finger, I think, 7 different symbols, and Brent will probably speak about that. But just by knowing how I talk and where I'm excited and maybe where my eyes shine, he guessed all those fingerprints on my left and my right hand, except of my left thumb, correct. And it totally blew me away. I say, how the hell can you do that? And then he told me about hand analysis and what he does. And 2 hours later, I was in his living room. We did a handprint of mine, and he looked at my fingers for almost 2 hours, on my hands for almost 2 hours. And he told me stuff about myself that actually some of my best friends didn't know. So it was really scary and eye-opening. So therefore, I'm really happy to have Brent here. And Brent, maybe this was my short introduction how we met. So, but yeah,
I was after I spoke at Mind Valley. I went to a Hindustani festival, and at that Hindustani festival, there was the Hindus like me. I'm not a follower, but they see that since I'm reading a life pattern, this is like a karmic pattern. And since I'm reading, and the way was brought there is because I read the guru who was there right shortly after I published my book. And, after that, it's like all the followers want to get their hands read. And there was this woman that came up in my booth, and she comes walking up, and she's just like, I saw you on a podcast. and you were talking about our guru, and they were saying something less than enlightening about the guru. And I'm looking at them, listening to this woman, and I'm like, I can see her fingerprint pattern, and I could see she was so belligerent, and she was such a victim state about it, and how I was so wrong. I didn't have a chance, right? And how dare you, right? And I go, look, right? They can say whatever they can say. I didn't say anything. But what I think you have is arches on both index fingers, which is like a compressed L on the index finger. And you can have a big circle, or you can have like this weird loop wave, or you can just have nothing. And when you have nothing there, that means that you struggle in that area, and the index finger is the area of power. So here we have a woman with power struggles coming up, and I go, may I look? And sure enough, there were there. And arch. And I said, you probably have waves, all the other areas, which means you have a need for love. And sure enough, they're there. And she just was baffled by that. Now, I don't do that in defense. I'm just saying that that's a good correlation to what Mike was saying, is that after a while, when you've been doing this for 15 years, you can listen to somebody's mode of operandi, their whole way that they see their life. And you can see that they're struggling with a particular area, as well as, having a purpose to restore or to go a path for satisfaction. And that's in the fingerprints. So when I was reading Mike, it was, he was talking about his love of working in Hollywood, and he had, he was a DJ in Ibiza, and I'm just listening to his, robotics technology for the handicap. And I'm going, what is this guy? He's got all this talent, and all of this is getting fit in within the same paragraph. And when you have all those things, that means that he is really, really fully self-expressed and a master of manifestation in many different areas. So he has these big balls or these circles on his fingers. So anyway, what I do is I show people this incredible neurological map. And this somehow is not like, whereas a lot of people fear this thing called palmistry as being very limiting, like, oh my God, what are you going to say about my future? This is a very liberating thing when you work it with science, because what you're saying is that you're validating a pattern that you probably know unconsciously, or at least you dip into it regularly. And then here I come with no agenda, and I can see this pattern. And this pattern is mind-blowing. And it's something that now neuroscience is starting to catch up with, independently from what the Institute of Hand Analysis has discovered. So
I'm looking forward to this, Brent, and I'll tell you why. Because Mike blew my mind with human design. When before I think we recorded the first one, we were just having a chat, and I just went to a website and I did the free thing, and it said you're a manifestor. And then I thought, okay, well, you get the summary. And then I Googled what a manifestor is. And literally, I read some of the stuff on there, particularly about the situations in which I lose my temper and what I can do to not lose my temper, which is essentially, rather than get frustrated at the fact that I want to do stuff or get people to do stuff, just let people know that I'm going to be doing it. And then they get it and I get it and everyone's kind of happy. So I'm massively looking forward to this. Just before that, though, you are literally the first person I've met that does this. So what's the story behind you getting into it?
Well, I was in software robotics for 20 years, so it's kind of a big leap to go into reverse engineering human beings. I had my hand analyzed by Richard Unger, who was a man who has read 70,000 hands.
Only?
That's a lot. So just imagine a 2-hour session.
2 hours each, yeah.
And multiply that by 70,000. So this guy has been doing this since the 60s.
Yeah.
And
not a lot of time.
Just a brief story about how he got into it, so you understand the history, is that he was trying to do palmistry and trying to survive, or, like me, trying to support a whole family. And he was frisbeeing everything. There's a lot of literature going back to Aristotle. And he was like, this does not work, right? But he started to see that there were some people in the 1800s that took this seriously, that did proper studies. And Benham was one of them. And he then at that point he was a financial consultant. He started reading everyone's hands in the office, and to make better sales, to improve the quality of their sales process. And you could see where they shut down and where the resistance was. And then you could start to see, but why is it that they have the same hands and the same lines as the other guy, but they have a different problem? And then he was at the Library of Congress researching the precursors of disease with fingerprints. And he was like, my God. And he went back, and at that point he had 10,000 hands. We've been doing this already for quite a few years. And he went and organized all these hands by fingerprints. And he saw all the people with circles on their right thumb are all masters of manifestation. And they kept using that word, manifestation. And all the ones that, like you, Moneel, you have a circle on your right thumb. And all the ones would have a circle on their right ring finger, all are about artists. And all the people that have money issues, who complain, that just have come from an ancestry where they just can't get their act together, or they're just in scarcity. They all had this dramatic compression in the area of value. So he's looking at this going, okay, I see an ancestral pattern, because that's what epigenetics show in the fingerprints. I see something that you're reading your ancestors' trauma and drama. And so he then came to Switzerland. He was teaching. He's kind of an unsung hero. And I came along, and I can't stop asking questions. So I get my hands read, and it blows my mind that he's showing me from a binder in this big, thick, one of those like really badly drawn, it's just something he doesn't have much style in his work. And I was like, my God, this needs to be a book. And I was just craving that. And I was like, and wouldn't that be the best skill ever? If I could do what he does, at that time I had a different agenda. I wanted to meet women. And I thought this would be a great way to walk into a club. And I go, can you tell how somebody is sexually from the hand? And he was like, well, I never thought about that, but yes, you can. There's this heart line that rises all the way up, and that tells how somebody is, I go, how do you, can you see how they are in bed? Well, you can see this part. I was like, I'm learning this. This is going to be great. Now, when I went into the class, and there, I have all these serious people, like naturopaths and all of them, and they're asking me why I'm coming into it. I was like, this would be a great way to meet women. I was the most hated person in this. Absolutely, people were baffled by it. I was honest. I was like, this would be a really cool skill. I have no other agenda. Now I'm saying I'm one of 12 people in the world that can do what I do. I've obviously taken this seriously, because I couldn't believe that no matter what line I pointed to and asked, he could give a 3-day workshop on it. And I was like, my God, this is a lot of complexity. And I did it terribly. For years, I was terrible. I started in 2007, and they wouldn't, this is highly guarded information. So they didn't publish any of this. And so I had to really fight in order to get the pattern revealed to the public. And, but I did it in a very respectful way. We saw that it was empowering. It was very guarded to show people life pattern analysis because of eugenics and World War II, right? So we don't want to be able to release this to the public in just without a responsible take on how you should use this information. So since then, under the custodian of the Institute of Hand Analysis and under the mentorship of two very senior hand analysts, who I'm now almost, I'm getting up to the number of hands. I've got 20,000 hands. I've now been released into the public since 2012, and I have been breaking through people's life pattern. And what specializes me from the Institute is that I am not just reading your pattern, because I find that to be painful. because what was happening is that I can read your pattern and I can see how you suffer. And it's kind of like having your pants pulled down and I say, goodbye, thanks for your money. Right. And then, and it was just really, really like heartfelt. I had a conscience problem about telling somebody that they're stuck in a money issue and they can't get out of it. And I was like, yeah, but you can get out of it. I know you can. I have no idea how you're going to do it because it's somehow biological, but you have this abuse issue and you can't get out of it. Right. Or you have a relationship issue. And so that's what I was going for. And I was trying to figure out, how do people break through?
So Brent, to fit really to the Bold and Bold podcast, Moneel and myself, we actually decide that we always invite people who have a mission to make the world a better place. So if you would describe what you do, how would that mission look like?
Well, my mission out in the world is not just to share wisdom, but to give an empowering wisdom to people so that they change their life. So I've changed, or at least I've given them wisdom that allowed their life to change. I've changed literally now over several thousand people. And so when I change your life, or when the wisdom changes your life, I'm just a kind of a carrier. When the wisdom changes your life, you see a before after of their life. You can see it on their face. They look like, untouchable, some of these people, and really stuck in a problem over a long period of time, because the longer you're stuck in this particular area, because it's biological, the more that you get an inflammation response. And then you carry inflammation, you get stress disorders, and your immune system starts to go whack and that sort of thing. So by showing them the pattern and going, this is how you get out of it, it transforms something fundamental to the way that they live their entire life, where they see new opportunities that they never did. So I've made people famous. I've made several millionaires out of this work. A lot of people who have literally changed careers. They got married. An Olympian finally who got dropped by Nike, changed his whole life within a month, all because of a edification of a pattern that I could see.
So the thing that I love about this, to Mike's question that you're doing, Brent, is, and let's maybe move away from the pants down analogy. And so you're spotlighting something about a person, but then you're taking it a step further and you're effectively holding their hand and coaching them through it and saying, well, look, yeah, this might be the case, but that doesn't mean you can't do anything about it. And further, if you want, I'm not going to leave you on your own just to stew on this and ruminate, because sometimes you find out a miraculous bit of information. Okay. And then the question and I've lived this firsthand, the question why am I like this? Why do I do this? And you get stuck. Then so then in a way it's like, well, shit, I wish I never knew. Right. So I think it's beautiful that you're not just kind of shining a spotlight. You're actually saying, well, no, there is a way out. Don't know what it is, but let's figure it out together. Let's hold hands and let's go on that journey. So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. So that you just outlined the whole agenda that I had for the Power in Your Hands book that I spent 12 years writing.
Sorry.
This is perfect. It's exactly what I would. That was my mission, because I wasn't interviewing these people because I wanted to know if hand analysis was real. It was already real for me. And so I was getting people like Tony Robbins, and I'll share my screen a little bit so you can kind of guess this little journey that I've been on, because it's valuable. You can see a little bit of the book. So here, my mission has been to find out these amazing people that I found inspirational. How did I get access to them? I just asked. Believe it or not, you just really have to just ask. And I was on stage at UPW in London with 6,000 people reading Tony Robbins' hands, been escorted by the Swiss guards into the Vatican, where they used to execute people like me. And I was reading the theological advisor to the Pope. What happened was I got a hold of a legal secretary who was very fanatical about what I was doing. And she then started to become an advocate to, get me connected to all these people, first Swiss and then internationally. And so, sitting today in CERN, where with the head physicist of 15,000 physicists, and looking at her hand and seeing the patterns of of her career, the reason why I was there, aside from wondering how the heck just having that handprint is enough, was I wanted to know, of all the 15,000 physicists, how did you get to that position to run CERN? Right? How did you get into this position, Tony Robbins, to be a seminar leader, right? With that's this unstoppability. So because that was educating me that anyone with their fingerprints and their patterns on their hands can follow that path. That was the idea, and it's a different path for every person. So I would take the handprint, and with no knowledge of who it was, I'd give it with about 100 other handprints to the Institute of Hand Analysis. It would be a shoemaker, it'd be the astronaut, it'd be the highest ranking general, it'd be the head of security here in Switzerland. And meanwhile, I'd also record an interview with the participant and say, what is your life purpose? Which is pretty out there.
Mm-hmm.
And your dilemma and your challenge. And then I'd give the handprint to the Institute and I said, okay, answer the same questions. What did this guy say was his life purpose? Because obviously he's happy, he's been recommended. And so they were able to guess by combining the fingerprints, which show our life purpose and our life lessons, with the hand shape and all of the things that are going on in this hand, the heart lines replaying that with his short fingers, that they're just really, really a feisty person.
Mm-hmm.
And highly temperamental, but the ring finger has a circle on it. He wants to be an artist. So therefore, he must be a feisty person who wants to be an artist who has power struggles because he has an indentation on his index finger. And so in this way, they were able to guess not only that they had a film director, but the kind of films that they made. And not that's the book. And that's also my teaching. So the book was my path to become a more empowered teacher, to show people, hey, look, you have the hands of Eminem. You could easily do this. This is how he did it.
Amazing. And so just for the people listening or watching, if you can watch on YouTube just to see Brent's slides, I think it'd be really useful because that slide was awesome and I want to see it offline so I can absorb it more. Also, I last week sent my fingerprints or handprints of both hands to Brent, and I'm sure he'll talk a bit more about the process and the logic behind why you take the pictures of your fingers in a certain way. And the clue is it's not just being able to see the prints. There are reasons, there are types of light that you have to do it in. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to you now, Brent.
Yeah, I think this is also a very good point now to actually do that. I mean, one of the reasons why I also want to have Brent on the show was that connection to Moneel. I always loved, and I organized some events where I put Brent in front of totally strangers to just look at their hands. And I was blown away by a couple of moments that we had. So Brent and Moneel, just for the audience, they never met. Moneel sent the fingerprints in. We already knew, so Brent, you can also talk about my hands. Of course, you have that. He did now, because that was interesting for me. Also in preparation of the call, he did a new handprint of my hand because I want to see if something in the last 7 years have changed in my life, because hands also change, right? And but he has never met you. And I think, Brent, I would also like to turn over to you now, because you can tell us if our name of our podcast, Bold and Bold, can stay bold and bold, or if it should be wacky and weak or something.
Do I see baldness in the hands? Yes, yeah, I do. By the way, you'll see something in that. So first off, this is what I'm showing you is a hand analysis that we normally prepare, and I've thanks to your good effort Moneel, to send me your hand, I am able to see all the good stuff here. Now, the first thing that we do is we draw out your fingerprints in a map at the top right in cartoon form. So, and what you need to understand first is a sandbox of the map. Once I tell you the map, then you'll be able to realize that this isn't cold reading or anything. It actually makes sense. Okay. So the map, you already know since forever, everyone here that's listening is a hand and an analyst. You already know that for 400,000 years, you have been using the thumb to manifest things and build things up. So if anyone has a circle on the right thumb, then we call him a master of manifestation. And you actually have it on both. You have it on the family area. So you might be asking, okay, well, what's the difference between the left hand and the right hand? The left hand, make a long story short, is your right brain. Your right hand is your left brain. What that means is that when we talk about the left hand, we're talking about something more artistic and feminine and more inner or self-oriented. And when we look at the area of the right hand, we're talking about something outer in the public. So when I say manifestation, I'm seeing manifestation in the outer world and manifestation in the inner world. So how this is, you have to imagine what the heck your hand is doing at around 7 weeks. That we're not reading your hand per se. I actually don't care about your hand. I care about your sensory cortex. And this is the model of the amount of sensory neurons responsible for your reality, that you're not in just an Oculus Rift. You're sitting here at the desk and you can feel this. And if you map that sensory cortex, it's a nervous system, right? And that system you can start to see in different stages of your evolution. You got the reptilian brain, and if somebody's got really strong instincts like you both do, then you're big palms. And then you go into the next stage of your evolution, you got the limbic brain, and the bigger that ball in that area, the more your pineal gland and amygdala are saying, my God, I love that area. I must have it. Please, every day. If you slice that open, it's filled with stem cells. So you're saying, I want to grow up to be that. And then it becomes a fingerprint. Big ball, big fingerprint. If it's a big ball, it becomes a circle. And whatever that circle is, we can say, you want to grow up to be in that area. You want that experience as often as possible. So when you say manifesting, we're talking about building things up. And we've been doing that for 400,000 years. According to anthropologists, the thumb is the reason why we're out in space right now. Our opposable thumb.
Wow.
So we're talking about not the English word manifestation. We're talking 400,000 years. Biologically, we have been using that language, body language, through our hands, through our sensory cortex. And that created a ball in your thumb. And naturally, you're going to use the word manifestation right off the bat. And since we're talking about the area of manifesting, what it shows is that you get great amount of satisfaction since you have circles on both, of building up community and being a community leader. Why leader? Well, if you look there, you have a circle on your right index finger like Richard Branson does. So
interesting.
Like that, like to grow and expand everything that they get a hold of. He can't be just happy having a record company. He's got to make Virgin. Now let's try a plane. Now let's get to space. It's constantly growing. Everything has to expand. So these are your life purposes. You're a family manifester. And what what a little bit interesting is that you have this kind of composite. It's called a like S for Superman. You have an S on your right thumb. And what that suggests is that it's not just a consistent circle of manifesting things. If you were, then you would just have your own business and you'd be just as happy having one business only, and you would be living off of that for the rest of your life. No, it's an S, which means that you're moody in this area. You go in and out. I'm going to do this project and then I'm going to build something else. And I don't want to be held to that. I want to see what I can do. And I'm going to build this project, and then I'm going to build another project, and then I'm going to build another project. And maybe the 12, 15 of them over a lifetime are going to work out. So there will be a lot of failures. There's going to be a lot of building things up again. And you're always showing up as the visionary, and you're always advertising that you're going to be building up a community, and it's going to be bigger and bigger this time. Seriously. No, really. This is going to...
Yeah. Mike, do you remember the phone conversation we had yesterday?
Yes.
Is any of this like coming to the surface in that phone conversation? Because this is why I'm smiling. This is spooky. We had a phone conversation for about an hour yesterday, Brent, and effectively, not so much about the inner manifestation, but the thing about multiple things, in and out, and that frustration, because we were both frustrated, and I'm not going to say why, but wow. Okay, sorry, I just had to share that, Brent.
Yeah. So, and I love your language, by the way, because what you're saying is that you have a mood swing of success, and then you go down into the other area of the thumb, which is frustration. So you are moody. You go into the area where what happens if you don't have a circle? Then you're going to be wrestling with frustration.
Mm-hmm.
So frustration to success, to frustration to success. I did not write this book while you were talking, right? Interesting, right? That you use language that is directly correlated to the area where you get your greatest meaning.
Yep.
Now, we have to put this in context that you have 7 other fingers, right? And what are they? Chopped liver, right? So we're talking about the entire nervous system. And to make a long story short, when you organize people by fingerprints, which is what I love to do on a Friday night, you can see that there's the 3 areas that I just talked about, the areas you need, right? But the other areas are areas that you love. And if you just organize people by fingerprint patterns, you'll start to see a disposition, a countenance on their face, right? If you have 4, 5, 6 of these, you're starting to get really busy when you have a lot of circles. That means that if you look at Tony Robbins or the head of CERN or the biggest tunnel energy engineer in Switzerland, Olympians, they all have these big circles, right? All over their fingers, right? We're talking about there's a theme. Mike Fuhrmann, busy people. But when you get into the area of waves, now you have a little bit of a dilemma, because in addition to you building up things and having a family, what we observe is that these people are in a love story, whether they like it or not. Their whole vitality and their entire way that they view their life is through emotions and closeness. And this is your major life lesson, because trust is your lesson. In other words, if you look at these people, they have a different lesson than Tony Robbins is. If Tony Robbins is not going to quit his job for a relationship, but you might. There's something really deep about how important it is to build up a project and still have love and still have connection with your audience. Other people are not in a love story. If you look at Johnny Depp and Eminem and Dave Grohl, they're not all about love. They're not heartfelt and open and vulnerable the way that you are, Moneel. So we have to take that into account too, that your life pattern is a pattern of you expressing yourself in a heartfelt connection to your audience all the time. And my guess is that when you go into the area of frustration, it's usually because there's been a breakdown in trust and a breakdown with the connection and bottling up emotions. And you can bottle up over and over, and then you're going to get a pattern in your hand. What pattern, you might ask? Well, then we start to look at how you are and how you express yourself emotionally. And that's the heart line that goes all the way up here. And you're super passionate. And then there's this other piece. If I was on a boat going down the river where it splits over, and if you look at the top horizontal line on any, if you're listening right now and you look down, there's a horizontal line that goes from your pinky all the way up to your index finger. That's how you express your emotions. And if it's a really big line, then you're really able to express yourself openly. But what does your heart line does is that you have this line that sweeps all the way up to the index finger, and then it stops. And then there's another line that goes all the way back up. What that means is you're not expressing exactly how you feel. You're going, I'm going to give it to time. I'm going to wait until I see more information before I let people know how I am. In the meantime, everything's great, and you're acting like a concierge. That's why we have this other line, this top line. So, and then you have this in the area of the thumb. That's where we can see all the chakras, right? So if you're into yoga, I can do a chakra reading on you. It sounds esoteric, but you can see the throat chakra, and all people complain. I got these things caught up in my throat, and there you bottle up things. Now, when you just combine that with everything I've said, we've already starting to see a pattern. And then we look at your hand, and if we compare your hand to other people's hands, well, that's when we start to understand, like twins separated from birth, right? That they find out after 39 years that they had a twin, right? And they go in and they realize, okay, they both drive the same Chevrolet, and they have, I'll come to these guys here. If I can get there, good. And they find out that they both smoke cigarettes, and they both have a woman named, married a woman named Linda, and they both divorced the same woman at the same time. And remarried a woman named Betty, and both their sons are named James Allen, and they both love stock car racing, and they both have jobs in law enforcement, and they both make toys in their backyard, right? What is that, right? So, but if I look at their hands are identical, and their fingerprints are identical. So Moneel, before I tell you that you have this transforming side, you have to understand that all the people with short fingers have a transforming side. And know if you have short fingers, if you're listening, you just copy and paste your finger size. And if they go into your palm and they stop before the thumb, then they're probably short. And what you're looking at is these people live different lives, by the different hands. And the more that your hand begins to look like the head physicist of CERN, then the more you're going to be the head physicist of CERN. It's really just that simple. So it's pattern recognition. And they're living completely different lives. Snoop Dogg is never going to milk a cow the way this farmer will. And this farmer has never put his half-naked body on Instagram the way Kendall Jenner's hand is. It's not even in their view. It's something to do anytime in the next 20 years, right? With all the priorities.
So do I need to go on Instagram Live, half naked, teaching people about science, wrapping it, all whilst milking a cow? Is that what?
Definitely. Now you got it.
That was a transformative thing that would liberate you while wearing women's underwear. That would liberate you so much. Okay.
Wow.
If you look at your hands, they're short fingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we look at people like that, and they go, "Wow, all you guys can't stop changing things. And we already know you got a master of manifestation story and you love managing and building things up, but then things go to chaos and war. And then you can see in my little mnemonic here that there's a different meaning for each of the thumb versus index finger. Respect, and then you go into blame, and then there's this area where you're trying to find happiness, just in general.
The thumb is the most left one in that table, right?
Yeah. So to read this table, you can see that the top row is your right hand, and the bottom row is your left hand, and the column on the left is far left is your thumb. So yeah, thumb, index, little finger. So if we compare you, let me just say, actually, also say one last thing about this. On a good day, Moneel, what we see is a guy who is waking up every day, and his soul says, I am going to build up a community today, and I'm going to be a visionary leader in love. And then your personality kicks in on your second cup of coffee and says, there's a pattern here. And your personality says, but how am I going to do this? Well, I got to be transformative. I got to be super clever. I got to be a concierge. I have X-ray vision. I feel that I got to hold on to my emotions as long as possible before I express. I need to consider several things. So I have 2 CPUs in my head, and I have a extra focus on my body. And so I seem to be preoccupied with my body and what it's doing. So there seems to be some blueness there, which usually is a part of the inflammation response that I'm talking about from the life lesson of feeling disconnected. And so now you're running into that is part of your day, plus trying to be your really good straight headline. So you're really going to be clever, and you're trying to be independent, but you're trying to keep the family together, and you're wanting an escape from it all, and you're trying to be accommodating to other people. And then all that is great. And so far your personality is on rails that day. It says, this is what I'm going to do. That's what Moneel is. Anyone who knows you, anyone who's been living with you, they know Moneel is going to be doing that. And then when Moneel gets on a difficulty, that means that the nervous system's in a contracted state. Now, the vagus nerve is caused you to go into a sympathetic nervous system.
Yep.
Sympathetic nervous response. And now you're starting to get shut down. The bigger the heartbreak, the more you shut down. And then there's a trust issue that starts to break you down. And then you bottle up emotions. And then you start to detach. And then you get frustrated. And then you get passive. And then you try to figure out how you're going to handle this thing by holding on to it. And you can't get out of your head. And you start over-focusing on your body and trying to do things with your body, but it's not working. And your throat chakra starts to bottle up more and more and more. And you want to just escape. And you're being in and you just focusing on task. I just got to get this result. And if I can get this project working, then I can relax and I can love. And then you essentially shut down.
Can I just share two? This is wow. Can I just share 2 things, Brent? Because I don't want people to think that Brent is just analyzing this. I want to give you a couple of examples where this applies. I think my last relationship, what he's just done, and the tone and the speed with which he talked about, the heartline, and then the brain kicking in, and then I've got to do this, I've got to do that. That is how my brain feels on those days. And on those days when I feel like that, those are the days that you don't hear from me, that people don't hear from me. Those are the days when I don't go to the gym, which is like a social club to work. Those are the days where I just sit at home and I want to be alone and I don't want to be on the phone. So if people are thinking, wow, he's just talking all this stuff. No, this is right. And then the second thing is, when you talked about that piece around, I got to do this task, got to do that task, got to do this task. This is why when we talk about in coaching or just in personal development, and you coach people, the idea of doing less means you actually do more. right? Mm-hmm. So sitting in front of your laptop for 8 hours a day going, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this, is not the way to do it. And that for me is really key. And the other thing that came up when you talked about manifesting, you were saying that, is if you just scroll up on that slide a little bit, scroll down, wrong way around. The blue pit, the body difficulty.
Yeah.
Right? That happens because I always feel like I need to do stuff. And so the hardest thing for me is to let go of doing stuff and to accept. And this is when we talk about universal building and manifestation, letting the power come to you when you're ready. It's really, my brain is always thinking, well, yeah, but how's it going to happen? Yeah, but how's it going to happen? It's not enough to believe and to trust. It's like, yeah, but how? So this is blowing my neurons, Brent. Thank you.
I love that. I love universal building. So what you're seeing is that there's an addiction to certain emotions that you have. The circles, wherever the circles are, is your dopamine release and acetylcholine. And so when you are saying, I'm not going to get my acetylcholine, it's like asking somebody, stop eating today, right? Try doing that. That's exactly the feeling of how to fight, or your fight to letting go. Any area where the circle is somebody's fight to let go, right? And so they could have a circle on their right ring finger and they can't stop being artists, and trying to be positive and brilliant and creative, but they got other things, right? Or it could be on the pinky, and they're really good at speaking, but they're shut down in other areas. So these things can drive you crazy, right?
Yes.
And that's why when you see people who are traumatized, and you can see the only way to really break through is to get the other fingerprints operational. In other words, I just told you your life purpose was being a master of manifestation, building up a community and being the visionary and being the lead in that, in love. But if love is not functioning in you vulnerably, you will not be able to open up that purpose. So you're getting the cart before the horse. So if you just do things and then have love, it's not going to work ever for you. And it might work for Mike, by the way, but it's not for you. Different set of fingerprints. I call him a master of manifestation as well, because he has these circles on his hands. Now I have a handprint here, and you can see that it's kind of hard to for your mind to transition from handprint. But if we look at Mike's hands, he's got all these circles all over. And so this is a guy who can't stop being busy, but in the area of outer respect and outer speaking up, there's a strong story within his history of how he was not respected for his opinion within the family. And this is you imagine he didn't have that just at the time that he had that problem with a father or whatever. It was in his soul. These fingerprints are developed at 7 weeks. It's just his trip that he goes into. And so what we call people who have recognized early that they have this weakness there, or this trigger of not being respected for being heard. And they learn this so much that the pain just doesn't stop. Then they purposely move into that area. Then we call that the exalted self, that he obviously shows up in the world now as a visionary leader who is an influencer. But the pain that he had to go through to get to that place in his life was a lot of experience. And that's experience that he had to compete every day with all the other things that his nervous system is saying, be a manager, do something passionate, build up something, do it brilliantly, have a connect to the soul, on and on. He's got those voices in his head. And as he as the rest of his nervous system goes, well, it's being dwarfed by that noise. It was like, if you have 5 hours of sleep, I guess we're not going to be fed that day with that experience. And so over time, that creates a pattern of neglect, right? But when you learn that that is an area that I am in my next chapter going to function with, I'm going to get mastery, then you have a master of a visionary influencer. And the more that he becomes that, everything in his life becomes even more satisfying, and everything becomes positive, right? So I just showed you a positive and negative version of your life, Moneel. If we look at Mike's life, the positive and negative all depend on the contracted state of him being able to feel respected and heard. And if he's not, then he's going to be a powerhouse.
And so just to replay what I've heard, so the good side and the bad side for me is about love. For Mike, it's about the presence of respect.
Yeah.
So can we just probe on those two things a little bit? When you say love, what is that? Is that like an intimate relationship? Is that just feeling love for myself? Is that love? Like, what is that love? And at the same time, what is that respect for Mike? Is it inward respect that he feels from the world, from other people? Or is it that in combination with respect that he then feels or has for other people?
Okay, we'll take one by one. First off, when we talk about love and the fingerprints and you have waves all over your fingers, you have to understand that this is a mammalian response of heartfelt connection. So when you go to a party and you are standing there just holding your phone and you're not speaking to anyone, you're not in heartfelt connection. But when you break the ice and it's now your party, you're in heartfelt connection. You're in rapport that goes all the way out to the 50 people around you. And you can just look at their eyes and they're looking at you. That's heartfelt connection. Moneel, when you are in that place, you thrive. When you're not in it, you don't. Full stop.
Yeah.
Now, Mike is in a story of service to other people. When you have 4 or more circles, you need to make a contribution to humanity and you have a service-oriented mindset. The more people that you're able to serve that day, all you need is a thank you. That's it. So he'll even go into self-sacrifice in order to get that. And while he's doing that, he'll even go to a place where he feels ignored, and he sometimes feels, at least in the old days, he would go to a place where he doesn't feel that what he's building up is respected out in the world. So any criticism that's headed his way, he would have taken personally in the previous life. So the experience that he had to go through, since he knew that was going to happen, is that he purposely put him in situations where he had to be a leader. And you look at that, who would want to be a leader of, a big marketing company with all the pressures of an insurance company, but the power pressures, the power struggles that you have anytime you're in a board of directors, that's huge. And you have to be able to speak up. You have to influence. So what he did is he turned that problem that we see in the fingerprints that frown upside down, and says, I'm going to put myself right in it and I'm going to deal with this every day. And the better he is, the more he's able to bring service out in the world. And here's a guy who, in 1 month I'd see him and he's totally building up TEDx and, sponsoring and making things happen. The next month he's got the best star in Switzerland. And they're making a new song, and then the next month it's out on the radio, and he's got 100 kids, in a big audience in there in the same month. It's like, how do you do that? And I can tell you how he does it, because he's doing exactly that area where everyone shuts down, which is the lowest ranking fingerprint. In your case, Moneel, it would be opening your heart to other people vulnerably. In his case, it would be, instead of avoiding the power struggles and avoiding areas where there's a risk that you're going to be blamed, and avoiding areas where there's a risk there's going to be no compassion, he stands both feet in to become a visionary leader of compassion and respect to other people. When he stands it's a consciousness, And then through that consciousness, you start experiencing more and more. And then you're able to get your carrot, the service to the world. Does that make sense? There's a lot of psychology to what I said, and I know that's probably going over people's heads. But you have to understand that you have different tastes for certain experiences through the fingerprints. And if you avoid those areas of your fingerprints, what you're saying is you're detaching from yourself, which means you're operating only on a percentage, the rest of your fingerprints, which means you're operating only on about 40% of your energy that day, which means that everything else is you're projecting out in the world, which means that you're now a victim for the rest of your life until you start to stop telling that story that the world is a painful place. On and on and on.
And thanks, Brent. Thanks actually for changing bold and bold into nude and naked, because you just pulled down our backs.
Go right to the core. I know it goes right to the core. I'm sorry, Mike, but
yeah, we don't have much time, so therefore I think it's good to do that. So,
no, it is good. It's great. In fact,
just one question, because also Brad, I mentioned, I mean, we know each other now since 7 years, and when we said, okay, we would like to invite you for the podcast, how would it be, for instance, if you do my fingerprint again 7 years later, and is there something that has changed? So I would be very interested in that.
Yeah. So every line on your hand, you'd have to have 1,000 ants crawling, 1,000 times experience coming across for you to have it. So all the experiences are the minor lines. So what you're seeing is several stages of your evolution. Some things are hard coded, like your fingerprints. You're not going to be able to change the soul genetics. In the area of the heart line, what it shows is that if you look at, this is your hand on the right, and you can see that if you just compare, you would never change your fingerprints. You'll never in life. You can cut off your finger and your fingerprint will grow in the nub of your finger. What I do see is that back in 2017, there was an incredible amount of restlessness, of wanting to escape your situation. The escape markers that you see here are in the area of the outer karate chop portion of your palm, which are horizontal lines that rise from the palm all the way up to the pinky. And as you can see, there's these horizontal lines here, and they're now starting to not be there. So when somebody has all these horizontals, that means that they're going into all of these, I got to escape. I got to get out of this situation. I want to come up with another vision that's going to come and get me out. I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to go travel. I need to get out. But normally when you get that many, it's usually because of the life lesson. I'm not able to connect vulnerably. I'm not able to connect vulnerably. I'm not feeling compassion. I'm not feeling respected. There's some loss of respect in my life. And so as a result, you're getting these horizontals. Those are gone. You got maybe 3 little scars there, right? Now, I'm not going to demonize horizontals. It's good to have horizontals. You need to escape all the time. Go read Harry Potter in German. That's a good escape. I still haven't finished reading that, by the way.
So one thing that comes up for me just related to that question, Brent, is what is a good time interval to revisit your handprint and your fingerprints? Well, your fingerprints don't change, right? But your handprint, as you've shown in the example of Mike 7 years ago and Mike now.
When your life has changed, when you feel your life has changed.
Okay.
So it could be next month.
Okay.
Or it could be, you just went through a big rebirth at an ayahuasca ceremony, and now you feel like you've got, a whole new take on life. This is a good time.
Okay.
So we look at people's hands, and the Institute has been monitoring people for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you can start to see, wow, what happens is the fingers start to get more bent the more you're in a difficulty, right? What I see from Mike in general is his lines are more or less identical, but his area of wanting, this is the area of your tasks here. And he was getting burnt out in the area of his career where you end up getting a whiteout on this line. You see it in the middle of your hand. There's underneath the middle finger, there's a vertical line that can rise all the way up. And when that thing starts to get white, that means I'm going into burnout. I'm exhausting all of my remaining reserves. And now that also is starting to relax here. And you can start to see that he's enjoying a lot of different projects still. I don't see a lot of new lines forming as I see a more relaxed disposition in the hand, a sense of feeling that it's a calmness, it's a more anchored position. There's a small bend, just a tiny little bend in the index finger. It looks like a little bit of a banana shape. And when some people, it's nothing. I'm really picking on you here because it's not. When I look at, I don't normally comment on it, but if you hard press me to see what the difference is, you're in a power struggle here, and now you're not. You're starting to straighten out in this. And it's just, you're more in your authority. You're more doing what you want because this area right here is super thick. Underneath the index finger is the every phalange can be read. So if you look and divide your index finger into 3 parts, if you look at the bottom part, that's how bossy you are, how much of an authority you feel. So looking at the richest man in Switzerland, he has a huge area of this area. That just means he's finding his territory and he's feeling good about where he is. And so this is expanded in his hand. So he's become more of a master of his domain.
Thanks, Brent. Always also looking at the time because we are getting close to the end of the podcast. I'm just wondering. So also when people now listening to that, and maybe they watch it on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify, and they say, okay, I'm now very interested where I am. You do those hand analysis, but also you help people to transform later on, right? So you have developed specific programs that really help people to do this.
Yeah, what I do is I would offer anyone who's listening right now, just go to thepowerinyourhands.com and you'll see there on my homepage, thepowerinyourhands.com, a 15-minute. You can just sign up. Or if you already believe you want to have a hand analysis, then just go ahead and do it. Jump off the diving board and get it. But for 15 minutes, I will do it.
We will put a link to the 15-minute sign up in the YouTube description so that people can do that. And they probably should mention bold and bold so that we can see where they're coming from. That would be awesome. And I'm pretty amazed by the way how you actually just undressed Moneel and me.
Hands back on.
I just thought you will. Sorry, I just thought that you will just speak about how bold we are, and not where we have our struggles. But okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, no, I loved it, and actually, what's interesting for me, Mike, is throughout my life, various people, and you know, I'm sure they have thought they've been saying the right thing because it's societal norm. Everybody said, well, you shouldn't, you know, you're oversharing, you know. But if it feels like what I'm hearing is in that sharing, that's how I get to where I need to get to in life. And so long as I can deal with it and I'm happy to do it, then it's fine. And so I don't mind, you know, I'm slowly going to pull my pants up, Brent. Thank you very much.
I want to lead you guys with one thing, right? When I organize people by hand type, and you guys have a very similar hand type, you have what we call earth. If you've heard me mention that already, you have big, thick palms. And when you look at people with big, thick palms, you'll see something in common is that they really generous people, and a lot of them don't have hair. So I hope that helped.
Thanks, Brent. As he says, looking at the camera with his beautiful, like, longish hair, well kept. Yeah,
Fine.
Screw you. Screw you and your mane of hair.
Love it.
Awesome. Yeah, that was fun. That was really good fun. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, guys.
Oh, and just before we go and we stop recording, Brent, is there any, obviously you've talked about your website. Are you active anywhere else where people can reach you, or is it mainly through your website?
Yeah, find me on the website. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can even find me on Facebook, Instagram at Brent.Bruning. Follow me on Instagram. But the best thing is just check out the website. It answers a lot of questions.
Because I know this kind of goes against what the people were saying to you when you started, but I think, things like this, things like human design, all these things, there is science and spirituality rooted in them all, and psychology. And I think it's really, really important that we spread all this stuff to the world, not from the purpose of, let's exploit the world, let's make a load of money, but there's actually logic behind, and there's stuff behind why you feel the way that you feel and why you think the way that you feel, you think, and why it varies so much. It's not a scattergun approach, right? Which is what I thought. There is a framework. That framework is determined by lots of things, as we know, at about 7 weeks. And then the whole journey of your life is related to that. So I'm massively grateful.
Well stated.
I'm going to hopefully do my kids and me with you as well. Because I think that'll be really, really insightful for them and for me.
Absolutely.
So, thanks for taking the time, Brent. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Cheers.